Peter. Our next speaker is Mike Hatrick, and he's the global head of IP strategy for Volvo truck groups. Here's some things about Mike that you might know and one thing that you don't know. So he has 25 years industry experience in aerospace, warehouse logistics, climate change, and trucks and construction. So the guy brings a lot of knowledge about different areas of innovation. His 5 patents under his belt. He was the runner-up in the Royal Academy of Engineering's McRobert Award for Innovation. Those you can find out in his bio. Here's something you won't find out. He was actually, he's the Brian Urlacher of Ireland. He was the linebacker for the Irish national American football team. So if you don't like what he says, don't mess with him because he'll take you out. Say hello to Mike. Bring it up.
Okay, hello FEI. The American football part was a few years ago, but nevertheless, something I'm still proud of. Okay, so here's a Volvo truck, and in the background you can see a Volvo construction equipment. And this is what I work with. But you might recognize this more. This is a Mack truck, which is also part of Volvo Group, more familiar on your American roads. But actually what I work with day to day are these yellow and black things, the construction equipment. A lot of fun. You see them in construction sites, you see them building roads, and actually the funnest part is working with these green guys on the right, which are the concept vehicles, autonomous, electric, talking to each other, and these are the things that we hope are going to disrupt the industry in years to come. So that's a little bit about me, but now I'm keen to find out who we have in the room. So I'd ask you all to stand up just for a moment. Okay, thank you. It won't be for long. And stay standing if you are leading, driving, or enabling, or discovering innovation in the organization where you work. Okay, I think it's actually everybody. That's a good start. Stay standing if you've been doing that for 1 year or less. Right, I would guess that's 50%. And then stay standing finally if this is the first time you've been to FEI here in Boston. All right, a lot of people. Okay, so that's good because you're the people I'm targeting. You can sit down. You're the people I'm targeting with this talk. So I was in exactly your position about 10, 11 years ago. And to expand a bit more about that history, this shows the people I've worked for, and Mike kind of introduced that in the introduction. So I've worked for about 20 years in aerospace, and then the past 6 years or so I've tried different things, warehouse logistics and so on, like was described. But the point of the slide is that there is a stage here about 10, 11 years ago where I transitioned from being the engineer, from being the innovator, to being the innovation manager. And that doesn't mean that I suddenly started managing innovators. It means that I was managing and creating the innovation infrastructure in the organizations where I worked. So a fundamental change. And one of the tools that I've used to do that is appearing on the screen as I talk. So this is what I call my building blocks of sustainable innovation. People often take photos of this. Go ahead if you want to. It comes up again at the end if you miss the chance. And this, if you like, is kind of my game plan of how I deliver this in the organizations where I work. Every single one of these boxes has a story behind it, an experience behind it, tools, methods, successes, and plenty of failures. And people quite often ask me, where did this come from? What book did you get it from? Which consultant gave you this? And the answer is none of those, or some of those. But what I'm going to do over the next 20 minutes or so is really describe where this came from and a little bit how I use it. So, 2 parts to the talk. First of all, my journey with FEI, because actually I can say definitively that what I've done over the last 10, 11 years and the structure that you saw on the last slide would not exist if I hadn't been coming to these conferences. And what Mike said in his introduction really resonated with me. We didn't prepare it, but when he talked about going to speak to people and touching things and going out there with the problem and trying to solve it, very much matches my experience. So I'm going to share that with you and then try and boil it all down at the end and give you some tips of how you might try and maximize your experience while you're here or in FEIs to come. So, the story starts in Belfast, Northern Ireland. You can probably tell by my accent. That's where I'm from. and I was working for Bombardier Aerospace. And at the time, Bombardier Aerospace were launching a very, very large cultural transformation program. And we were given this new mission to be the supplier of choice of innovative aerospace engineering solutions. So this was kind of a green light. And I pretty quickly put my hand up and said, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of delivering this. Because the award that we were runner-up for, that Mike mentioned a few minutes ago, had got me intensely curious about what was it we had done that actually made us innovative, and how could we replicate it. So for 5 years, I've been reading books, I've been taking in educations, and when this came along, I said, okay, I want to be part of this. And we started a bunch of innovation initiatives. This was our engineering leadership team. Each of us was spending, gosh golly, about 2 hours a week doing this, so not a lot. It was moving pretty slow, and we had this project at the top called Understand Innovation Best Practice. There were 4 of us in that team, like I said, just a couple of hours a week, and each of us, one of the things we did was we looked around and we picked 3 or 4 organizations that we thought were particularly innovative, and we went out trying to find out what is it they do. How do they do it? Is this something we could emulate, something we could learn from? Could we go and visit them? Could we read a book about them? And one of the guys in the team, he's called Davey, came to me and said, Mike, there are innovation conferences. Really? And to be honest, my experience with conferences before then had not really been that positive. You know, you go, you spend a few days, maybe there's one thing, a small thing that you pick from it that's useful. And you know, I kind of questioned the value. But anyway, I said to Davey, if you can get approval to go, that's fine, off you go. And we can talk about it when you get back. So off he went, here, to FEI Boston, back in 2007. And on the 3rd day of the conference, he phoned me from the street outside this building and said, Mike, we've got it all wrong. You'll never believe what I've seen, you'll never believe what I've heard. We have to change everything we're doing. And I didn't believe him. I thought he's having too good a time. So I said, yeah, sure, mate, that's fine. Go to your last day, enjoy it, come back, we'll talk about it on Monday. Fine. So that's what we did. He came back and we sat down and he started telling me about what he'd seen. And as he talked through it over the course of 30 minutes, I kind of switched on. And first of all, I had the realization, wow, there really are innovation conferences. And he's picked up a huge amount from this place. Others have done this before us. Those little projects we had, we were taking tiny steps, moving along, we were kind of searching where we're going to go. Well, hang on a minute. David's just spent 3 days with 500 people who've done it before. We should be learning from these people. And maybe I need to pay more attention to this. So a few days later, we literally printed out every single presentation that had been given at FEI that year. We had them all on my table. The 4 of us in the team sat around for most of a day, and we started pushing the paper around. We started cutting things up. Some things got pushed off that we thought were maybe not for us. And as the day progressed, they started to cluster into 5 groups. And these 5 groups were these, which are appearing on the screen. And behind each of these, we had kind of a pile of paper. Stuff from the conference, stuff we already kind of knew, books that we thought were relevant. And this became kind of our mission or our structure of what we were going to go off and try and do. So that seemed like a good start. Now the next thing was, there was another conference coming up. And Davey said to me, right, you have to go to this one. I was already convinced. And back then, there was a conference called Innovation Immersion, which was kind of a sister conference to this one, run by the same people. It took place in Phoenix, and we went there. And straight away, we got a quick win. I was laughing at the movie that Mike showed, talking about idea crowdsourcing. For us, actually, this was a quick win straight away. We met a vendor at this conference, with which we started doing idea crowdsourcing, using a web tool, capturing the ideas of our people. It was a great way to get started. It was a great way to start pulling in people in the organization, get the message out that we want to be innovative. And remember, this is back in 2007. It was pretty new then. That's 10 years ago. And I also talked to a lot of people at that conference. Unfortunately, not all of it were things that I wanted to hear. This was very much a wake-up call. So the first one, most organizations trying to innovate do too much talking and not enough doing. Okay. If an organization has been talking about becoming more innovative for more than 1 year, they will never get there. We'd been doing this for 1 year. And then, one evening, a guy asked me 2 questions. Do you know what it is you want to achieve? Do you have the mandate to do it? And I was really angry. And I wasn't angry at him, I was actually angry at myself because I was unable to answer the questions. I didn't have a good enough answer, and it made me feel a bit foolish that I wasn't thinking far enough ahead in terms of what we needed to deliver. We then added on a field trip beforehand. We popped over to the Bay Area, to Palo Alto, went to visit IDEO. And I'll make no apologies, I'm an IDEO fanboy. I've been learning from them for 10 or 11 years. And there we learned a lot about what they were doing with encouraging organizations to become more innovative. And with the 3 days at the conference, the 1 day over at IDEO, we had so much going on in our heads, so much talking, that evening I had my Jerry Maguire moment. Now, I googled Jerry Maguire while I was writing this presentation. I was kind of shocked to discover it's 20 years old. So maybe some people don't even know the movie. But anyway, in the movie, Jerry Maguire, who's a sports agent, is really frustrated with the organization he's working for. And he, one night, writes his manifesto of what he thinks needs to change in the organization. And he emails it to his boss and to everybody in the organization. Seems like a good idea, right? You know, really striving, taking a risk. It's a bit like that slide. And he gets fired. So I kind of did the same thing. I wrote a long email of what I thought needed to be done, having captured some stuff of learning for the last year, of what needed to be done to deliver our mission. I also said that I thought I needed to work on it full time. And I sent this email to my chief. And I happened to know that my chief was in Montreal at the time. And I tried to time it that he would get the email about the time he was sitting down with a glass of whiskey and a cigar. And I pensively waited for the reply. Luckily, I didn't get fired. In fact, the email that came back pretty quick. He said, I love it when a plan comes together, just like Hannibal from the A-Team. And what he said was, Mike, I wanted to ask you to do this, but I was afraid you wouldn't want to move away from engineering. So we were off and running. And the next step, of course, was, right, where do we go? What's the next step? And we heard about FEI Vienna. There was a sister event in Europe, which was happening in Vienna the year after. And we started looking at the program. We thought, yeah, we'd like to go to this. And we noticed there were some empty speaking places. And Davey said to me, Mike, we should present. And I said, what would we say? We're only starting this. And he said, we could tell our story. And that's exactly what we did. We went to Vienna, we told a very open and frank, honest story about what our plan was. By now, of course, with the work that we'd done, it was time-based, we had budget, we had a structure of 26 pilot projects we wanted to start, and we even had a first view of what we called our innovation calendar, which were the things that we wanted to do annually, every month, every quarter, that we felt would start to create this drumbeat of innovation in the organization. These are all the original slides, which is why they look old. It's kind of funny looking back at them now. Anyway, we presented it, and nobody laughed. In fact, we got huge validation and a massive confidence boost by the feedback we got from the people that we showed it to. And they told us that we were unbelievably honest in what we were saying, because we talked about our fears, we talked about our uncertainties. In a way, we tested our plan by showing it to people like you who could tell us if we were crazy or not. Next step, back to Phoenix, back to innovation immersion. Things are moving really quickly now. And here I saw Nancy Tennant-Schneider from Whirlpool present about how she had led the transformation in Whirlpool at introducing systematic innovation over 10 years. And there was an mentor that we'd befriended there, a guy called Randy Voss, who told us about what he does day to day, how he learnt it, the handbook that sits on his desk that guides him in his everyday. And we thought, this should be us. This should be the kind of journey that we should be taking Bombardier Aerospace on. And we added, step by step, these inspirations into everything that we were doing. We also added on another field trip to the D School in Stanford. Funnily enough, the co-founder of the D School is the next presenter. I was just chatting to him in the back. So it's funny that our story included this. We were struggling a bit with the whole creative environment side of things. In an old organization, it was difficult to do. And we went there and we got some inspiration about how we could start small. Instead of trying to change a building, let's just change an office. Show it can be done. And that's exactly what we started to do as we went back. And we had what we call now the bar napkin moment. 3 days of conference, 1 day of field trip, huge amount of stuff going on in our heads, meeting fantastic people. After a few beers, we just started writing on bar napkins. How can we take this to the next level? What else should we add to our plan? How can we accelerate things? Who else do we need to engage? Who else do we need to get buy-in from? Okay, 2009, this was actually my first time coming here. And here I heard this really funny presentation called Millennials, Why Won't You Let Me Innovate? It was out in the big room. And I remember there were these two young people from 2 different companies presenting about the frustrations they had in their own organizations. And I could hear people behind me saying, who do they think they are? How do they think they can work that way? I would never employ somebody like this. If they worked for me, I would completely curtail them and stop them. Really entertaining. And we had lots of young people at Bombardier Aerospace at that stage. Right, that's what I should do. I ran back from the conference, engaged those people, funneled all this energy and frustration into our innovation program, and that's how we delivered the 26 pilot initiatives. Okay, next step. There was another conference, again by the same organizers, called EPIC in New York City. So here, now, we've been doing this a few years. And those 5 blocks that had emerged on my desk from piles of paper that we accumulated from a conference, it's the same colors, but now we've done a bunch of stuff. We were doing idea sourcing platforms, we were collaborating with a lot of people, we could measure how many engineers were in our innovation projects, we were doing stuff in knowledge management, we were starting things on creative environment, and doing a huge amount of communication. We felt proud now to be showing this. It was like the plan was coming together. And we even had a slightly more elaborate version of our innovation system, the different programs that we planned to embed into the everyday working of our organization and what each one of those would deliver. Next stop, back to Europe. I actually changed jobs at this stage. I left Bombardier, I joined a company called Swisslog. And that was convenient since the next one was in Switzerland. It was just down the road. So along I went, and that's the first time that I showed the building blocks that I showed you about 10 minutes ago. As you can see, the company's color was red. That's why it looks slightly different. And where did that come from? So I'd now been doing this 5 years, and going to a new company as innovation manager, I spent some time just picking out all the stuff that I thought had worked, piecing it together, putting it into a structure that made sense to me. And the role of this was twofold. It was so I could structure what I was going to do, but also to show it to my boss. We used a traffic light system with this. Each box had either a red, an amber, or a green to say which ones we had and which ones we didn't. And then we made a plan, we prioritized them, we made a plan of how we were going to build these building blocks over the course of the next 3 years. And that's exactly what we did. And I realized I was onto something, because when I put this on the screen in Zurich, thinking, what are they going to think of this? Everybody picked up their phone and started taking a picture. So I like to show it again. It keeps evolving. And there was a bunch of stuff happened there. Alberto Alesi presented at that conference. And it was incredibly inspiring. And I'll talk a little bit more at the end about the importance of inspiration. There was also a team challenge. Everybody, imagine all of you, all doing a challenge through the course of 3 days, working on it in the evenings, working on it at night time. And I was invited to be one of the judges in the panel who were choosing who should be the winning team on the last day. And the point of the story is I realized this FEI community is amazing. The power and the knowledge of the people in this room is really quite incredible. So engaging with that when you come to a conference can be incredibly powerful. It's also when I was asked to join the FEI Europe Advisory Board, which is a voluntary thing that I still do today. Now, instead of being the rookie, instead of being the person who's amazed at everything they see when they came to FEI, I felt like I was the one starting to give back. I'd taken a lot. I'd learned a lot from people. And now it was incredibly fulfilling to be able to pass some of that on to the people coming after me. Okay, getting pretty close to current day. FEI Copenhagen was the next one. course, always learning. And every conference, I like to pick out one or two of the key speeches that made an effect on me, that gave me something to go away and do. Sir George Buckley from 3M talked about measuring innovation, and it was the most concise description of how to do that I'd seen. I took it, went straight back to Swisslog, started to implement it. Vince Ferron, formerly of Apple, formerly of Coke, now of Dolby, talked about working internal networks to drive innovation, working Steve Jobs to drive innovation, influencing him, using his power. And it just validated to me that the role of innovation management is not so much about process, not so much about technology, it's all about people. It's about people engagements and how you can influence and work with people. Over to Boston the same year. And my presentations now, I think we're all about giving back and probably a bit about showing off as well, but getting a bit more ambitious, I talked about why idea management is like keeping an aquarium. That was good fun. And then the next time in FAI Munich and in Venice, it was the same sort of thing again. I presented on the topic of implementing an innovation training program. Something we'd had a lot of success with at Bombardier. We were now starting to do at Swisslog. And I don't think actually is talked about enough. Field trips, right? So there are field trips at FAI here. I do encourage people to do this. You get to see things that you've never seen before. Okay, maybe you missed a couple of talks in the conference. But going back to the point about inspiration and being here to learn, this has been really important to me when I've had chances to do it. We constructed our own field trips, you remember, IDEO, D-School. But in this one, like today, they're provided. We went to the BMW Design Works. I learned a bit about scenario planning. At the time, that was new to me. I went straight back to Swisslog, started to try to do it. We went to IDEO Munich. Here was a bit of a shock, because they had taught me before about how to change the whole organization to become more innovative. And there, the practice lead talked about, we kind of changed our mind. We now think it's important to deliver in projects. And I felt betrayed. Everything I've been trying to do for 6 or 7 years, they told me was wrong. And then I realized about a year later that they were right. And this is what I tried to do now myself. Back to Vienna, we ran a workshop. I did this with an ex-colleague. And this was kind of fun. We took 5 problems that we'd had at Bombardier, innovation management problems, and asked the delegates to try and solve those problems as if they were the innovation manager. What would you do in this circumstance? And they came up with some ideas and they had to pitch them, and then we showed them what actually we had done, sometimes with success, sometimes with failure. And I realized that this whole kind of thing is not well understood. That you can learn a lot from the people at these conferences who've been there and done this kind of thing. The nitty-gritty stuff, the day-to-day, down in the dirt side of innovation management that you don't necessarily read about in a book. Okay, we're almost up to current time. I was here at FAI Boston last year. If any of you were here also, maybe you saw me present. This, for me, was like things coming full circle. I've been doing this 10 years now. So what I did was pull together my view of why innovation initiatives fail at large organizations and what we can do about that. Remember, I'd done this in 4 places. I'd seen successes, I'd seen failures, and it ties in very well with what Mike showed at the start. We didn't plan that, but it worked out nicely. Almost a carbon copy. And some of you might even recognize the slides. I'm very, very happy to talk about this topic, about how to avoid the failure or accept the failure, if you want to engage with me later on. Okay, so here we are, FEI Boston 2017. The sister conference happens again next month in FEI London. I'll be the conference chair. If you want to come along, you'd be very welcome. But what I'd like to kind of round up now in the last 5 minutes or so is talk about, while you're here, how to maximize your FEI experience. So this is very much a personal view. As you can see, I've been through quite a long journey. I'm just trying to boil that down now into some takeaways. I've got 4 tips for you, which you may like or you may not. It's up to you. But I encourage you to think about FEI as your journey companion. Where are you right now, and where do you want to go? And how can FEI actually help you to get there? Because let's face it, innovation management is kind of lonely. There aren't so many people working with it in an organization. You're a bit different to other people. You're trying to bring change, which people don't like. It can be really hard. And that's why being able to build a network of like-minded people, people who, to be honest, kind of, well, not literally, but cry on each other's shoulders. Well, when I showed that presentation last year about why innovation initiatives fail, people came up to me afterwards and said, I thought nobody else thought this. You've just said exactly what I'm thinking. I thought we weren't allowed to talk about that. You know, I wish I'd met you a few years ago. We could have done good stuff. So ask around, find out what people are doing. You, of course, will find out what works, what doesn't work. Do you remember our moving things around at the table to find the things that we thought would work for us? Bring a problem. What's that problem that you need solved? And can you find it here? Can you find the solution? Maybe piece all this together like we did to develop your own plan of where you want to go. Becoming a speaker was transformational to me, to be honest. It's a great way to test stuff. It's a great way to build a network because people come and talk to you. And it's a great way to kind of validate what you're doing. Test it. And confidence, I mentioned that already. All right. To be honest, I would say FEI has enhanced my career. You know, it's a great experience to stand up here and present to people. It's given me the ammunition and the information that I need to do a better job in these unusual roles that I've had. It helps me to stay relevant these days, that's why I keep coming. Of course, I'm learning new things every time. And it feels great to be able to give back. So this is kind of coming to full circle. All right, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, commit to the experience. I feel different when I'm here. You know, I got up this morning and felt excited. Don't always feel that way when I'm going to work, to be honest. And when I'm here, it feels like a timeout. It gives me time for reflection. While people are talking, I'm thinking, I'm making notes. Wow, yeah, we could do that. Isn't that a good idea? I feel excited. I feel inspired. It gives me some time to self-question what I'm doing. I also feel kind of safe. You know, you can talk about stuff here in terms of problems that maybe it's difficult to do in your home organization. And it doesn't really feel like reality. It feels a bit like being in some sort of utopia. Given that's the case, let's commit to it and enjoy it and take as much from it as we possibly can. We've all made the effort to be here. So be here. To be honest, I've seen in the past people during presentations doing their emails at the back. And fair enough, that's their choice. Something might be extremely urgent, but to me it's a big missed opportunity. You know, it makes a big difference to actually be able to sit here and hear the actual person speaking and then speak to them afterwards. And while you're here, why not add on something else? Maybe it's a bit late now, but maybe for next year, where else could you go? Could you add on an extra day, an extra half day? Go and see something inspiring, go and visit a company. Maybe with the network contacts you make, you could arrange reciprocal visits to go and visit each other's organizations and learn. And generally, to sum this tip 2 up, what I would say is turn on. So be here, tune in, listen to what's going on with all the people around you, and drop out. And I don't mean go and start taking some psychedelic drugs, but what this is supposed to mean is drop out of your everyday, drop out of your emails. Be here, maximize the experience that you can. And actually that does take some hard work while you're here. All right, networking, tip number 3. Right, we all know this one, it's obvious, that's one of the main reasons we come here. But I say, go for it. There are people I've met as much as 10 years ago from these experiences that became close collaborators from other companies. People that we visited, people that we bounce our problems and ideas off, people that have become friends. So that problem that's keeping you awake at night, somebody else here probably has the same problem or something very similar. And maybe somebody's actually solved it already. You don't have to do it yourself. You can find out what they did. So talk to as many people as possible. There is an app for connecting, and actually people. So you see somebody standing, not talking to somebody during the coffee break, including me, come up and speak to them. Speak to all the delegates, speak to the vendors. There's a lot of vendors out there and sponsors. They may well have that thing that you need that just unlocks the next thing within your organization. And you can do it quickly. And you don't need resource from your own people. And talk to the speakers, right? We're not so scary. come up and speak to me if there's something that was interesting in my presentation, some problem you want to bounce off me. And for me, that's great as well, because I hear what you're doing, and it inspires me and makes me want to do new things. And then make it actionable. There is a bit of a danger when you're here of information overload. Right? So much is coming at you, whoosh, stuff that you've never heard before, stuff that you think, wow, this is all fantastic, and we start scribbling and making many, many notes. Or there's also the risk of kind of this overwhelming feeling of well-being. I just let it wash over me, and we make no notes. And then we go home and think, what did I see? So what do we do? How do we actually solve that problem? And I'm saying this, of course, this is all from personal experience. So what do I do? So I do this thing called categorizing the presentations. And it just is a way of me quite quickly deciding what I'm going to do with each one. It kind of goes back to what we did years ago when we had them on our desk and we were choosing which one to act on. So I classify them, like Alberto Alesi, inspirational. It makes me feel great. It gives me stories to tell. But it doesn't necessarily give me anything that I write down and go and do. The second type then is people that present, we're brilliant, right? Often quite big corporates. We're fantastic, we do this, we're wonderful, this is how we innovate. And for me, again, I don't take so many notes from those people, but if I think that's a good fit with my organization, I'll make a note that I want to talk to them more deeply and find out the nitty-gritty behind it. Finally, the in-the-trenches type talks. Me personally, these are the ones I get the most from. People that talk about the structures that they use, the mistakes that they've made, the projects that they've delivered, the tricks that they use in their organizations. Those are the ones that I make lots and lots of notes of. But I generally have a kind of a rule that I use a notebook, I've started already today, where I try only to write down the things that I really think I'm going to do. Because otherwise I just end up with a book full of stuff that I can never actually work with. So I write down the things that really made my ears prick up, that I think I'm going to do, and then at the end of the conference, I filter it. So at the end of the conference, quite often on the way home, I go through the whole notebook, and I just choose 2 or 3 things to put a red star against that are the things that when I go back to work on Monday, I'm going to start doing. And it might be only 1, 2, or 3, but because of the filtering activity, those are probably a pretty good 1, 2, or 3, and pretty relevant to what I need to do. So, time to wrap up. Back to the building blocks. You get some insight now of where this came from. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into kind of creating this. It continues to evolve. I use it all the time. Of course, these days I work right over on the intellectual property management part, so kind of developing that in detail at the moment. And it just leaves me to say welcome aboard. Welcome to the FAI community, those who haven't been here before. I hope you have a fantastic time, and I look forward to talking with as many of you as possible. Thank you.